What's up, guys? Coming to you, want to talk to you about the nerd community. So I realized this week that there's a faction going on within comic book lovers like myself, and I think it's because there's two different mindsets going on in the comic book world, and the opposite, very different. And I don't think it's the one that gets talked about the most, because a lot of people talk about the faction between like a lot of the political stuff going on in comics, and and I mentioned some of that too, but that's not, I think, really what's driving the fandom apart, because I feel like some of those guys are making really bad comics, and everybody knows it. Even they know it, which is why they kind of lash out at everybody. Anyways, but I don't really want to talk about them. What I want to talk about is two philosophies that are going on simultaneously within comic book readers. And I'm in one camp, obviously. And if you've watched the channel a lot, me and Lewis are pretty much in the same camp. I probably lean more toward the middle than he does. But what those are, you have what I'm going to call the traditionalists, and you're going to have the, I don't know, the open-minders. And so you have these two extremes, I think, where on one side you have these guys who don't want to see any fundamental change to the universe, and they like consistency, but they it's not that they don't like growth, they just want a good acknowledgement of it. And I'm not saying that the other side doesn't want that. It's just that this one side really doesn't. It's make or break. If you ruin our favorite characters, we're going to get frustrated. We're going to get angry. And so we want things to be our way. And it takes a lot to make change. We saw this in the comic book community when we shifted from the Golden Age to the Silver Age. A lot of people hated the new characters until they got to know them. And then it had a similar thing when people like Barry Allen and Hal Jordan passed on the mantle, and people like Kyle Rayner, John Stewart and Guy Gardner, and Kyle Rayner and Wally West picked up the mantle, and there's these people, the traditionalists. I think came to love them because they were written well. I mean, they were really good stories. Maybe some of them actually grew up during that new phase, but some of the old traditionalists hated the new stuff and quit. The New 52 is a big break because they changed everything about the universe. And so that's the traditionalist side. And then you have the other side, which I don't really want to call them the open-minded side, because it doesn't imply that they're open-minded to either way. They're really bent toward wanting new stuff in comics, new exciting stories to be told, not the same old lame stories that have been told 100 times. So if it means changing or killing off characters, who cares? Just want a good story, want it to be written well. And so I think we both have commonalities. Like, we want good stories, we want good characters, we want the comic book industry to thrive and be healthy, but we have fundamentally different views on the necessity of which characters are in the comic books. And I'm more on the traditionalist. I love certain comic book characters, and I want them to be in the comics. I do have opinions, that seemingly contradict that, and I'm willing to admit it. I feel like Barry Allen should have died and stayed dead, and Lewis has influenced me on that a good bit. But I've had some conversations with both sides. I guess I've been more willing to accept change to some extent. there's some extent where I feel like you ruin a character. But then there's the other side. I'm like, okay, this is a cool thing. Let's take Dick Grayson, my favorite character, tied with Tim Drake. I love Dick Grayson. I hate that he's not Dick Grayson anymore. I really hate that. I do not like that move. But I know a lot of people who do, and or at least, well, I don't know them, but I've heard from a lot of people who like that, who like the new change, the new direction. I'm like, but it's not Dick Grayson. Like, sure, it's an interesting take. The idea is interesting, but did you have to do it with like the most loved son of Batman? Like, come on, it makes no sense. And so, I mean, I really despise it, and part of it's because of my favorite character, but he's been such a historic character in a while, and so. But some people are, okay with it. They're like, whatever. It's an interesting story they're developing, and and similarly with Wally West, I despise that they killed Wally West the way they did. Once again, we have another instance of DC killing off characters unceremoniously just for shock value. And they didn't even do it well, I thought. But I've had conversations with people who thought, oh, well, it was, really good story, really interesting. I'm like, some of the story is good, and I can see that. And I don't know that, maybe I said this early in this video already. It's not that they're tearing each other apart. It's that there's such a big disagreement there. And I think sometimes I've seen people demonize the other side. Like, why can't you just accept new stories? Or, I can't believe that you hate comic books and hate these characters, that you would want them to be changed like this. And so I don't think that's very, good. But I think it's really interesting to see. Like, there's two fundamental disagreements of perspectives on how comic books should be written. I love consistency in story. I love seeing characters grow and evolve, and I'm not opposed to them becoming new characters in their own right. Dick Grayson leaves Robin, becomes Nightwing, amazing. Jason Todd leaves Robin, becomes Red Hood, sweet. Wally West becomes the Flash, awesome. And even when he leaves, and he's not the main Flash, but he's still a different Flash trying to find himself, beautiful. I don't mind these characters changing and developing over time, to some extent, as long as you don't ruin the whole core of the character. One example of how I don't like how it happened was Cyborg. Like, his internal idea is he's half man, half machine. He's a cyborg, and he's trying to find that balance of he wants to be just a normal guy, but he's not a normal guy, and he can't help that. There's nothing he can do, and he lives an extraordinary life, but he wants to be like an average Joe, who also does superhero on the side. He strives to be human, and it's hard for him. And what they've done to him in the recent days is made him cut that completely off and made him all about being in the Justice League. And he's basically a hollow character. He has no importance except for what he looks like and what he can do. That's it. There's no character development, nothing. No discussion, nothing. And I hate it. I really hate it, because he was an amazing character that they just threw away. But some people probably are like, oh, well, he's awesome on the Justice League. I'm like, well, he is, but his character isn't developed. So I see this really interesting development, and it just kind of came to me that we have these two fundamental ideas. Because I was like, how do people read this stuff? How do people like this? And it's like, well, they just like new stuff. They like new ideas, and I can kind of see where they're coming from, I guess, now, because I was talking to a guy who is like that, and I completely disagree with him on the fundamental level, but I can appreciate the way he approaches it, at least. I think that's really interesting. I will say this guy that I met is we both completely agree on Tomasi being the best Superman, at least in modern history. So, uh, although boy, oh boy. Anyways, that's beside the point. He's a big Marvel Wolfman fan too, so I feel like even though we might disagree and it might be hard and difficult to talk about new comic books because one person's going to hate them, one person's going to love them, or vice versa. So it's like one person's going to hate them because they change too much and they're not keeping the same characters. And the other person's going to love them because they're new. Or in the reverse, if comic books are the way I like them, they're going to be similar, echoing of the old stuff with some new stuff thrown in, but the characters will generally remain the same. They might grow and evolve, and the other person may or may not like that. It's not that they don't like that idea, because I kind of glorified it, but I can read stories that are similar. I don't care if they're super different. I like them being tied to the old stuff, echoing, very similar. It's not going to hurt me. I don't want the same story rehashed like what they do with Miss Martian every few years. They're like, oh, nobody knows her now, even though all the characters that she's hanging out with know her and have known her for 20 years. Nobody knows this character anymore. Everybody has forgotten her or whatever. She's new. This is a brand new character, and she happens to be a white Martian, and she's got to hide it from everybody. It's like, you've done this like 5 times. Like, why do we need to do this again? That I don't like. But, echoing similar stories and, that's fun. It doesn't bother me any. So, let me know what you think. Do you find yourself on that scale anywhere? Do you completely disagree with my read of the situation? What do you think about it? I'm curious to know. And I've got some cool reviews coming up. My hope is to be more consistent, to work on doing Monday nights, Wednesday nights, Friday nights. This week's all kind of messed up, so I'm trying to do a few tonight. Although by the time you get this, it's in the morning. So it is Friday. Anyways, at least depending on where you live. Thanks for watching. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Give us a like. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. We'd love for you to join the family. Even Yoda and Groot want you. So, we'll catch you next time. Peace.